I played Xenoblade Chronicles for the first time this January, and honestly, I just can't get it out of my head. Not due to the fact of how much I love it, but rather how much potential I see in it. I'm not saying this game is bad and you should not play it. If it looks like something that may interest you, you should probably check it out. But for me, someone who has poured 70 hours into this game, I feel kinda underwhelmed by the experience as a whole. This video also contains spoilers as I go over the entire story, and I would also like to mention that I own none of the gameplay or cutscene footage from this review, because I didn't record anything while playing, due to the fact that I never expected to make this video. So now that I have all that out of the way, onto the review. Xenoblade Chronicles starts by showing us two titans fighting each other. They kill each other, and life starts to flourish on their backs, with the Homs on the Bionis and the Mechons on the Mechonis. However, the war is still not over, and the Homs and Mechon fight for survival. We see the Battle of Sword Valley, and things look bad for the Homs, until Dunban shows up with the Monado, which is the only sword that can harm Mechon, and defeats them all. A year later, we play as Shulk, the main character of the game, as he goes through a normal day in his life with his two friends Ryan and Fiora. Shulk has been entrusted with the Monado, and works on it until the Mechon attack his village. Through the Monado, Shulk sees a vision of Fiora getting killed by a new kind of Mechon with a face, and attempts to stop it. He fails and Fiora is killed, leading to Shulk and Ryan going on a quest for revenge. Along the way, you meet many other characters going through similar problems, and then around the halfway point of the game, things start to pick up when the group heads to Prison Island, where a giant named Zanza, who created the Monado and killed the Mechonis, is chained up. Shulk frees him and unlocks the true power of the Monado. Zanza is killed by the Mechon that killed Fiora, and Shulk fights him. He keeps fighting until he hits a new silver Mechon and learns that faced Mechon are piloted by Homs, and that the silver Mechon is piloted by Fiora, who doesn't remember who he is. Mechon retreat to the Mechonis, and Shulk follows them, until he comes across Egil, who is the leader of the Mechonis and creator of the faced Mechon. Shulk and the rest of the group continue towards the Mechonis, and get Fiora back after a fight with Egil, but are knocked down to the cut-off Mechonis hand. The group are split up, then meet back together and find a species called the Machina, who originally ruled the Mechonis. The leader of the Machina tells the group to go kill Egil, and they embark up the Mechonis. Upon reaching the capital city, the group goes to a data tower, and a voice takes over Fiora and explains that a long time ago, the Mechonis and the Bionis were in peace, and that the Bionis was provoked to attack by Zanza. The being inside Fiora is revealed to be Maneth, who is the god of the Mechonis, and was put to sleep during the battle. The group make their way to Egil, and he learns of this and is traumatized that his god would betray him and fights the party. Shulk loses, and Egil activates the Mechonis and starts to destroy the Bionis. The group are knocked off, but are saved by Maneth's power and the Machina ship. Everyone meets up and makes a plan to go back to fight Egil. After climbing through the Mechonis again, the group make their way back to Egil and fight him. This time, the party wins, and a voice inside Shulk's head tells him to kill Egil. He refuses and instead plans to make peace when he is shot in the back by one of his friends from his home. Dixon, who is a father figure to Shulk, reveals himself as a disciple of Zanza, and a being comes out of Shulk's body and takes the Monado. This is the true form of Zanza, who was the god of the Bionis, and was locked up for causing a war. Since Zanza needs a host in order to survive, and Shulk just happened to be the Hom's chosen, there was nothing truly special about Shulk, and Zanza just used him as a means to an end. Zanza makes quick work of the rest of the group and is about to finish them all off, but Maneth comes out of Fiora and sacrifices herself. The group takes Shulk with them and escape to the Machina village. Not long after being back in the village, Dixon returns to fight them, but when all looks hopeless, Shulk is revived by Alvis, a friend he met on the journey that has similar powers to him, and he goes and fights Dixon and his minions with a newly manufactured Monado. The group make their way back up the Bionis and fight Dixon in his true form at the top. Dixon is defeated and reverts back to his Hom's form as the rest of the group leave him, and he dies from his wounds. The group go to a simulation of space and fight Zanza, who can now control his future. The party fight Zanza 3 times, and Shulk kills him, because even though he could see the future, Shulk is the chosen one, so he just wins. After the battle, Alvis appears before Shulk as a ball of light, and since Shulk now has all of the Monados, he is a god. With this ability, he makes it so that there are no gods, and he recreates the world in his image, and everyone is in peace and harmony. The end. Now, if you haven't played the game, I bet you're thinking to yourself, hey, that's a pretty good story. But I want you to think about going through the story not over the course of 5 minutes, but instead drip fed to you over the course of 70 hours. The pacing is absolutely abysmal, because most of the story is just characters explaining the same plot point over and over, or characters explaining why you have to go on a 2-hour detour just to get to the next area, and then go through yet another 2-hour detour until you reach the next big story moment. And then you have to wait 5 to 10 hours for the next interesting thing to happen. This would be fine if the game actually developed these characters, but it doesn't, which leads me on to my next point. I have a problem when it comes to the characters in this game, especially considering I don't care about most of them because they're not developed enough. Let's start with Shulk. He is a kid given the power of God through a sword that lets him see the future, and he sees all of his friends killed in many ways. I thought this would have a major impact on the story, especially near the beginning with Fiora's death, but Shulk just seems mildly inconvenienced about his visions until someone dies. Shulk should have a character transformation throughout the game, to the point where he is almost unrecognizable by the end. But at the end of the game, he just abruptly changes because Zanza told him to, instead of Zanza slowly manipulating him to the point that he doesn't know what's right and wrong anymore. Then maybe Zanza's plan would have actually worked instead of just making Shulk think about killing Egil in his final moments. Most other characters can be summed up pretty quickly, so I'll just rapid fire through them. Ryan is Shulk's friend who wants to protect him from the dangers of the Bionis, and comes to learn that he can no longer be Shulk's protector because of how far he has come. Charla has the most potential out of any character, and in my opinion, should have been used to show how a soldier's mentality of war can affect the people around them. But instead, Charla is just another revenge character archetype who wants to kill all the Mechon like every other character in the game because they killed their fiancé. Dunban wants revenge for the attack on Colony 9, which is a fine motivation, but instead of making that his whole character, what if instead he was just not strong enough to fight the Mechon, and he has to deal with the fact that they have bested him, and he will never be able to fight them again? Melia is a half-Homs, half-bird girl who has to deal with being the target of an attempted assassination, and having her father murdered right in front of her. But she often seems unfazed by any of this, and just keeps going for a little revenge. Maybe if she was broken by the events that transpired, and didn't want anyone else to face the heartbreak she did, it would make more sense than just wanting some revenge and wanting to stay close to Shulk. Ricky is just annoying, and serves no real point in the narrative. Fiora is a boring character at the start, but then becomes far more interesting when she gets turned into a Mechon and has to deal with the fact that she's slowly dying. Overall, most of the characters in this game are just cardboard cutouts with vague motivations and only seem mildly inconvenienced by what's going on instead of being absolutely traumatized. This applies to everyone except Egil, who is probably the most interesting character in the entire game. Egil had his home decimated by Zanza, and made his god go into a deep slumber. He just wanted to ensure that history would never repeat itself and protect his remaining people. But he let his hatred and his fear for the Bionis consume him so greatly that he's now willing to commit genocide on a massive scale just to prevent the Bionis from reawakening. What did Shulk go through? He saw his childhood friend die, he witnessed everyone he loves die repeatedly through his visions, and he even learns the truth behind the Mechon, yet he still keeps his composure. I think it would have been better if, throughout the game, Shulk slowly drifted further and further away from his moral compass, until he was unrecognizable from the Shulk at the beginning of the game. The game attempts this, but as mentioned earlier, doesn't really work. Now, onto one of the more important aspects of the game, the combat. When I first started the game, I thought the combat was a welcome change. However, after playing the game for 70 hours, I have come to the conclusion that I think it's broken, due to poor power scaling, limited options in combat, and the economy surrounding it. Before I get into all that though, I'm going to describe how the combat works in this game. You have a party of 3 characters that all auto-attack, and you control the leader of the party, and use their abilities in order to deal damage, create openings for other party members, and defend yourself or others from incoming attacks. The combat is similar to Knights of the Old Republic or Dragon Age, if you have ever played either of those games, but where those games focus more on character interaction and world building, Xenoblade just gives you a cutscene every hour or two. Alright, I've rambled enough now. First, let's talk about power scaling. Xenoblade has many different ways to make your character stronger, including a typical level system and art points. Art points are gained after killing enemies, and are very useful near the beginning of the game, but by the end of the game, I had all my abilities maxed out. It meant very little, and I often had a surplus of points with nothing to spend them on. The only thing that you really need at the end game is just a few good gems, and a level higher than the enemy, and you just win without effort. But if you are even one level below the enemy, you get annihilated. Gems are also a way to power your character that works as intended and is an interesting mechanic. Gems raise stats by percentages and not by a flat amount, so they can be carried for a longer time and greatly impact your character more than the art points or even leveling in some cases. The lack of options during combat is also a serious problem. Before you enter combat, you can select different abilities and swap around party members. But when you enter combat, you can only use your 9 abilities, or if you're Shulk, you have 8 abilities and interchangeable Monado arts that can deal massive amounts of damage, or be used to evade attacks by giving status buffs to your characters. In combat, the only way to command your party is through 3 basic actions: running away, normal attacks, and heavy attacks with no defense at all. This is a problem in some encounters, especially during the Assassin and Telethia boss. At this point in the game, Shulk cannot hurt humanoid characters with his blade, and to beat this boss, you have to fight an enemy that Shulk can barely damage, and an enemy Shulk does more damage against, yet has a bigger health pool and more armor. In this situation, I would like to command my tank to fight the assassin, and have Shulk fight the Telethia, while the healer runs back and forth and patches up wounds. But I can only make them run away, attack, or charge the opponent. So I just end up rushing the Telethia until I win, instead of implementing strategy in a game where the entire combat system relies entirely on planning ahead and being strategic. The last problem I have with the combat is the economy that surrounds it. The one currency in the game is gold, which you earn by killing monsters and doing side quests, which you don't earn much XP from, so they mainly give you gold. When you kill enemies, they drop materials that can be used for certain side quests or sold. Selling these items is not hard and will get you a lot of money quickly, allowing you to buy the best new armor every time you meet a new vendor. This is a problem because it doesn't encourage me to do side quests. If I can just run in a field for an hour and get more gold than I would by first activating the side quest, going to the marked spot on the map, killing the enemies there, then running back to the quest giver, then your game has a balancing issue. For my final point, I would like to bring up one of my favorite games of all time, Nier Automata, and compare it to Xenoblade in every way, so just beware of minor spoilers. Nier Automata is an action RPG, which pretty much means it's an RPG where you perform actions instead of just staring at the screen and occasionally pressing a button, so the game makes sure you haven't passed out yet. Okay, look, Nier Automata's combat looks like this. And Xenoblade's combat looks like this. Which of these looks like it would be more fun and engaging and has an element of skill to it? In Nier Automata, I can walk up to an enemy and fight him, even if I'm underleveled, because I've progressed in skill throughout the game, so not only is my character stronger, so is my ability to notice enemy patterns and perform combos. If I try to fight an overleveled enemy in Xenoblade, I either have to cheese the game or just accept defeat. Now, on to the themes. Xenoblade is a game about hatred and revenge. And while Nier Automata covers many of those same themes, not only does it cover them better, but it also has more profound things to say, like emotions in software and how fragile humanity truly is with its over-reliance on technology. Nier Automata is a story that can only be told in a video game, but Xenoblade only has one idea that would work better in a video game, and that is the concept that the player has been controlling a lifeless husk of a person the entire game, whose purpose is to die and be used to bring back a god. This could be told in a book or a movie, but it wouldn't have the same impact as playing a game. That being said, every other story element and plot point could be told 10 times better in a different art form, because you could allow for some creative writing or innovative cinematography instead of just stale shots of characters looking at each other and moving around like robots. Personally, I feel the only way to truly fix this game is to remake it. So this is my concept for a remake. Give the game to Platinum Games and let them release it on the Switch Pro or the Switch 2 or whatever Nintendo calls it, so they can go all out on the world design. Have a combat system where you swap party members and everyone has their own classes. Like, Shulk could be your standard character that juggles enemies, while Dunban could be much quicker but have a lower health pool to compensate. And then Ryan could play similar to a Dark Souls or Monster Hunter character, where he attacks slow but deals a massive amount of damage. Rework the open world so the areas are smaller, less barren, and have more interactable elements. The only way to interact with Xenoblade's amazing world is just to kill enemies, press A to gather minerals, and run over balls of light to gather materials. I'd be fine with this if the areas were smaller and I could remember them. Going back to Nier Automata, that game has a fairly small open world, but I can remember most of it, and it changes throughout the story to reflect certain events and side quests. Xenoblade has a massive world that feels like a chore to go through, and if you just took out a few areas and removed parts of the game, it would work so much better. The game also has a length problem and should be shortened to around 35 to 50 hours depending on how much content they take out and how much they add. Side missions should also be tweaked, so that instead of having over 400 meaningless side quests that are monotonous and feel like nothing more than busy work, have 25 to 50 side quests that are well written and provide insights into the characters in the world. This remake could never happen though, because many fans would complain that content is being removed from the game, and they would not support it, even though they are expanding upon concepts and attempting to make the game more accessible and fun. I could go on this tangent for a while longer, so I might just save that for another video. Just so everyone knows, I respect all of your opinions. If you like this game, and if it struck an emotional chord with you, I can understand that. But in the same way I can see where you were coming from, I would like you to understand where I'm coming from. As someone who has played JRPGs for a long time, that this one just didn't really do anything for me. I honestly wish I could love this game with its beautiful world and great soundtrack, but I just don't see it as a masterpiece, and that's why I'm giving Xenoblade Chronicles a 4 out of 10. I also want you commenters to list some recommendations you may have for me, and I'm willing to carry the discussion further in the comments if anyone has questions. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe as it helps smaller creators like myself. This is my first video, and it was a little rocky, but I hope you stick around and see what I make next.